All right, so right, you watched the Brain Pop video, okay, about the Texas Revolution. Okay, so this lesson we're pretty much seeing how, because the land of what is now Texas was part of, right, in control of Mexico, and actually Mexico in general was under control of Spain at first, and this is what we're gonna see. And so we're gonna see how Texas then became independent. So, like I was just saying, Mexicans moved to overthrow Spanish rule in the early 1800s. Okay, so again, the Mexican territory actually was at first under the Spanish rule, and so uh, people in Mexico had to gain their independence from Spanish rule first. So we have Miguel Hidalgo and Y Castilla, a Mexican priest, led a rebellion of about 80,000 poor Indians and mestizos in hopes that Mexico would become independent from the Spanish monarchy. Right? If they became independent, their lives would improve. Um, I don't know if I would compare him to George Washington, but I definitely would. He was an inspiration for sure, like an more of a idol, more of a hero kind of versus George Washington, played a huge role for 45 years, right? Um, Miguel Hidalgo was not part of that for 45 years, if that makes sense. So in 1821, Mexico became independent, and in 1824 adopted a republican constitution. Okay, so right, republican, um, okay, where they are not ruled by a monarchy. Right, it gave people their rights. People living in Mexico got their rights due to this constitution. All right, moving on. So this new Mexican government, right, like how the BrainPod video said, contracted impresarios or agents to bring settlers to Texas. Okay, so they wanted to bring them to Texas by offering them land. And in 1821, we have a man named Stephen F. Austin started a Texas colony on the lower Colorado River. I'm sure some of these names you're going to recognize. Houston, Austin. Do we notice? What are they? They're names of current cities in Texas. Yep, Houston, Texas, right? Austin, Texas. Okay, very creative, right? Yep. So over time, Texas developed a very unique culture. It was very distinct from the rest of Mexico, as it's very different from the rest of Mexico, but it wasn't also similar to the culture that was in the United States. And so it was very unique. It was a very different because it really didn't fit the culture of either Mexico or the United States. They had, like how the video said, they had Tejanos, which were more uh, Mexican people living in Texas. But then we had the Texians, who are going to be more American, right, people living in Texas. And so we have kind of even like two distinct groups almost living in this area as well. And that's kind of how this culture developed. All right. So, in exchange for cheap land, settlers had to obey Mexican laws. Some settlers ignored these laws, and so in 1830 we see Mexico banning further settlement by Americans. Right? They're kind of in fear. They put this ban because they were kind of fearful that these Americans would just kind of overrun Texas. Okay, they kind of were fearful that they would overrun, and so they put this ban to kind of control these Americans living there. And then by 1834, we see Mexico becoming under the rule of General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. And when I say he's under control, it's because he then pretty much tore up the Republican Constitution, pretty much made himself dictator, which we have talked about this term dictator before, where they just are in complete control, right? And everything is under their power, okay? And so we really start seeing Texans wanting independence to get away from, especially Santa Anna. All right. So Texans start revolting against Mexico. So on March 2nd, 1836, Texans finally declared their independence from Mexico. So they themselves are saying, like, we are independent. We are not under Mexican control. And so this new Republic of Texas was born. So they modeled the Declaration and Constitution after the U.S. documents, right? So this Republic of Texas created, right, their declaration saying that they're independent from Mexican government. They created a constitution to give its people, right, their rights. And they modeled it. They used the current U.S. documents as their inspiration. However, is important to note here that in these documents, they made slavery legal. They made it allowed. Well, obviously that did not go well with Mexico, right? Just like how it didn't go well with the United States, right? When they declared their independence, Britain didn't like it. Mexico doesn't like it. And so we see, right, them pretty much going to war. And one of these battles, more known battles, is when Texans occupied and fortified the Alamo. Okay, so the 200 Texans held out for majority of the time, but the Mexican army overcame the Texans, and all the Alamo defenders were killed. I mean, they held out though. I mean, for a good solid month, they were holding out. For 200, only being 200 of them, they held out pretty good. But the Mexican army eventually overcame the Texans, and they were all killed. But this "Remember the Alamo" became a battle cry kind of for the war, or for this revolt. Remember the Alamo. They're like, remember what they did to, right, the other Texans. Yeah. Alright, so I got some pictures on these next two slides. So this is kind of a painting. You can actually go and visit, right, the Alamo today. Okay. But this is a painting of kind of this battle at the Alamo. Just kind of wanted to show you because it's a very the Alamo is a very kind of famous place to visit now. But then here's the map from our textbook. Okay. So this is right. This is not all of Texas today. Okay, what's in the darker green, not the shaded green, right? The disputed area is with the lines. Okay. The lighter green is what is the United States. Okay. Obviously Mexico is a tan color. But that like darker green is what the Republic of Texas declared for themselves. And you can see kind of where all these different places are, right? San Antonio, Texas, where the Alamo was. I just want to kind of show you kind of a visual of what this had looked like. All right, so in the Battle of San Jacinto, Sam Houston led the Texans in capturing Santa Anna, and they forced him to sign a treaty giving Texas its independence. So as you saw right in the BrainPop video, they kind of Sam Houston kind of led almost a sneak attack on them, but and they used the battle cry, right? Remember the Alamo, and they eventually captured, right, Santa Anna, and they forced this treaty saying that Texas is independent. So this republic, right, the Republic of Texas, they created a town named Houston after Sam Houston, made it the capital, and then even elected Sam Houston as president of this new Republic of Texas. So this Republic of Texas, right, is basically saying they're their own country. So most Texans hoped the U.S. would annex Texas, making it a state. So they wanted the U.S. to annex, take it, admit it into the United States as a state. President Jackson's was a little worried about that, especially because since they have made slavery legal, it would make then Texas be admitted as a slave state, and that would upset the balance of free and slave states. That means, like, right, slave states, there would be more slave states than free states in the country, which would, if that was the case, then in like Congress, right, where all the decisions are making, there'd be more congressmen who are from slave states making decisions and voting on things versus free states. When if there's a balance in Congress. Mhm. Yep. And so this is kind of one of the first times we're really seeing that. But Jackson did recognize Texas as an independent nation. But Mexico is going to refuse to recognize Texas's independence, and that kind of leads us up to tomorrow, the next few days, when we talk about the Mexican-American War. Right, even though they were, right, Santa Anna was forced to kind of sign, right, that treaty, Mexico does not, they refuse to recognize that they're independent. Okay, so those are our notes, not too long here. Okay, go ahead and submit those into the assignment. Okay, and now after you're done with that, okay, If you did not make a good grade on the brain pop video, okay, or honestly, if you want to just, even if you made an 8 out of 10, I'm taking the highest score, okay? So take the quiz again. If you need to, you're more than welcome to watch the video again, okay? But take the quiz again after you've kind of gone through the notes and kind of get, oh yeah, a refresher here. All right?